Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. I'm Rosebud Reads, and welcome to our holiday special fanfic. Today's fanfic is called Twitter Pated by Koi Chaser Lou Corinth. I hope I'm saying that right, but I apologize if I'm not. But yeah, I am very excited to read this. It is a scum villain fan fiction, and it's pretty funny. It's actually an AU of scum villain, where it's a wing AU, which is kind of fun. You don't usually see wing AUs for scum villain, but it's always fun when you see what people do with them. That being said, I don't own anything. The official material belongs to Seven Seas Entertainment and the author, MXTX, but we're just playing in her sandbox, and I am playing in Koi Chaser Lucorinth's sandbox as well. But yes, I am very excited about this. We're almost done with the holiday fanfic special. Just one more day, and then it will be a new year and new things to come. But yes. All right, well, let's just go ahead and get into it. Twitter Pated by Koi Chaser Corinth. Summary: Shen Qingqiu has a total handle on this weird wingfic AU he's transmigrated into. But what is with this bizarre festival? Otherwise known as Oblivious Shen Qingqiu, wifebeams the peaks into pining. Shameless! This is silly. If you don't like Oblivious, gay is a thing that happens to other people, Shen Yuan, you probably won't like this. This takes place many years before the first fic in this AU, and can be read as a standalone since it's not related at all. The fics are just in the same wingfic universe. So we're just going to read this one. This takes place during the White Lotus Binghe era, before Shen Qingqiu knows who Shang Qinghua is, and before the Immortal Alliance Conference. So here we go. Chapter 1. There were many reasons to argue that this horrible AU world Shen Yuan transmigrated into was even worse than the original PIDW. One such reason: flying with wings sucked. It was a waste! They had perfectly good spiritual swords, but no. You were stared at like you were sitting on a seat designed for little old grannies and pregnant women if you made the intelligent choice to stand on a sword instead of ceaselessly flapping. Didn't anyone appreciate how hard it was to appear elegant while flying with wings? Sure, the soaring and swooping were fine, but what about the staying in place? Or the taking off and landing? Shen Qingqiu had to cheat and waste so much spiritual energy, keeping his body alight in a way that looked effortless, channeling it into his wings like he would his sword. Also, the concept in general made no sense. Humans weren't aerodynamic. It was literally impossible to fly when person-shaped. But somehow it fucking worked anyway, because proud immortal demon way and logic were antitheses. Fuck the rules of aerodynamics. The only rule that mattered in this world was the rule of cool. He supposed it could be worse. If he nitpicked flight too hard, he'd have to nitpick basically everything else. At least his wings were cool. Oh, a little oversized to be comfortable. He had a handle on it. May have taken a few days alone in his bamboo house, channeling the OG Shen Qingqiu and walking back and forth until he wasn't tripping on his robes or knocking his wings into things. But he'd been Shen Qingqiu out of one year's seclusion for nearly a year now. He'd fully adapted to this weird as hell wingfic world. Even though it was as horribly inconsistent as Airpline's usual writing. Ugh. More so since the spin-off had only been a couple short chapters, so he couldn't use his memory for the 90% AU-specific stuff that was filled in by the system. For one thing, bird traits were all over the place. Genetics didn't seem to play a big role. Some people had almost textbook traits of a singular bird species, whereas others were a mix of many different birds slapped together. And sure, some of the mixes were cool, he guessed. Made his monster-loving heart do a partial doki doki, a single doki. But still! Okay. The factful shifts brought them into more like griffin-like forms than true birds was pretty neat. Not losing his arms was a bonus, even if they went all talony. Fine. He could admit it. Shen Qingqiu's shift was good. Too good for the original goods. The main inspiration was obviously the red-capped crane with large and graceful wings of white. However, when he transformed, his head was more like a barn owl with glinting green eyes and a killer sense of hearing. He still had a crane-like crest and the red circle markings. His body was tall and lanky, like a serval cat, and just as graceful, but the size of a dog. His wings even had muffling feathers to make them silent, an owl trait Airplane must have discovered for writing Mobe Jun that he had decided to shove around. The huge simp. Not that Shen Qingqiu got to transform often, or almost ever. In a cultivation setting, what kind of stuff wouldn't be better handled with a sword than talons? See? Brain-dead world building. It's a pretty big waste, only transforming during the rare shifting lessons for his advanced disciples. On the topic of advanced disciples, where was Binghe? His little white lotus was still young, but blooming wonderfully under fair treatment. Who would have guessed a child would do better under kindness instead of a whip? Anyone with a brain, for one. Stupid original goods. Binghe was late with his lunch, which was nearly unheard of. The eager-to-please protagonist was exceedingly punctual, despite Shen Qingqiu urging him many times to enjoy his youth. With all the time Binghe spent trailing Shen Qingqiu like a duckling, he had no idea when he found the time to woo his future wives. The sound of the front door opening made Shen Qingqiu glance in the direction, fanning himself lazily. This disciple has brought Shizun lunch. He apologizes for being delayed, said Binghe, bowing politely with the tray in his hands. Shen Qingqiu waved the apology away and motioned for Binghe to join him. Is there trouble? He asked. He didn't hear any screams, but the peak was a lot more rowdy than usual, full of random bursts of music and cheerful voices that echoed all the way to his bamboo house. Not as such, Binghe said, though his expression was dark with annoyance. There are visiting disciples from other peaks. Some were insistent on sampling the lunch this disciple has prepared. Of course, this one did not let them touch any of Shizun's food. Oh? What peak? If Bison Brutes were back to bully his little lotus, he'd have to go ask for more examples of techniques from Lu Qingge, with them as guinea pigs. Xian Shu. Ah, this master does not mind sharing, Shen Qingqiu said. He gathered up a few of the side dishes, Binghe always made too much, particularly snacks, and pushed them back towards their cook. Establishing good relations between the peaks is important. You'll find gift-giving a useful technique to foster such bonds. Go on, Binghe. This old man wasn't going to stand in the way of you charming sisters. As if to illustrate or perhaps counter his point about gifts, one of the small monsters Lu Qingge had dropped off darted into the room, saw them, then spun around to flee, only to crash headfirst into the wall with a tiny thump. It took a few dizzy steps and then hid behind a thin plant that didn't cover its long, slinky body. Shen Qingqiu sighed, hiding his mild amusement behind a fan. Yet another creature intended to be eaten to help without a cure, yet it had such big googly eyes that were perfect for begging. How could one have the heart to butcher it? It seemed Binghe would have had no such conflict if the look he was giving the thing was to be believed. For some reason, Shen Qingqiu was strongly reminded of a jealous dog staring balefully at another pet in its master's lap. He never seemed to like any of the things Lu Qingge dragged over. Such a sticky child. This disciple will escort the vermin out of Shizun's house, he said. The creature, which was essentially just a living version of the worm on a string memes the size of a ferret, secretly named String Bing in his mind, didn't have much of a chance against Liu Binghe's agility. Soon it slumped miserably in his arms, casting mournful looks around his side as it was carried away. This disciple doesn't understand why Shizun allows it to trespass upon his privacy, Liu Binghe grumbled as he returned. It keeps the mice away, Shen Qingqiu said loftily, and he laughed a little internally any time he saw it. It was practically a muppet. Come on, airplane. Really? This one keeps the pests away, Binghe said sulkily, and then, so low, Shen Qingqiu could barely hear even with his advanced cultivation. If only I could send one of the bigger pests away too. An eruption of raucous laughter flowed in through the window. Though isolated, Shen Qingqiu's bamboo house was positioned to hear the echoes from all corners of the peak. He supposed the original goods made it so out of his paranoia and control issues. He certainly wouldn't have allowed for such noise, however. Shen Qingqiu sighed, finishing the last of his lunch. Though heartening to hear how cheerful his little ducklings were, they couldn't be allowed to run amok. Theirs was the peak of arts and elegance, after all. He stood, sweeping from the house with an eager Liu Binghe, stuck a few respectful steps behind. The peak was in the beginning stages of being decorated with bunches of flowers and streamers. Shen Qingqiu frowned at one, racking his brain to remember the reason. The New Year celebration had just recently finished. Liu Binghe made a polite little cough. Shixian and Shimei are enthusiastic over Shizun's permission to celebrate the Flitting Festival this year, he said. Shen Qingqiu was drawing a blank on such a thing from Proud Immortal Demon Way, so it must have been specific to this world. But when had he agreed? Yes. He could vaguely recall Ning Yingying asking a lot of boring intersect paperwork questions while he was busy first observing the worm on a string sand string monster closely. He may have been somewhat distracted, eventually waving away the minutiae of the tasks to her and Binghe's discretion. What a little scamp! He couldn't even be upset she'd taken advantage of his slight fixation on beasts. But now he had to hide that he knew absolutely nothing about this event. He could only hope it was PG, taking place in the protagonist's prologue, and all. From the name, he could guess it had something to do with flying or dancing, which seemed perfectly acceptable for a peak centered on the fine arts. So it's already that time of year again, Shen Qingqiu said, in a way he hoped sounded wise and introspective. Liu Binghe looked very much like he wanted to say something, but was holding himself back. Shen Qingqiu let him work through it as they made their way through the peak, shushing over-exuberant groups with his mere presence or gentle taps of his fan on shoulders. Liu Binghe was adorable when he was restless. Still not as big as Shen Qingqiu, though growing swiftly every day, he still managed to appear so due to his wings. While Shen Qingqiu's wings were larger than average, Liu Binghe's were seriously oversized for his current body. It was even worse when he was a fresh disciple, their weight and size responsible for many clumsy accidents. It had given the original goods plenty of excuses to punish him. Tripping over his own wings or knocking over priceless artifacts, breaking his Shixian's nose once by a surprise flap, etc., etc. Endless reasons for his elder to bully. When Shen Qingqiu first had transmigrated, he'd nearly fainted to see the state of Liu Binghe's wings. They were plucked harshly in places. A cruel punishment method Shen Yuan was quick to ban from his peak, and had his pin feathers growing back incorrectly and in painful clumps. No wonder in the AU, Liu Binghe grew up to rip Shen Qingqiu's wings off feather by feather. Patooey! Though his black wings gleamed now, their starling-like fletching dots, iridescent in the light of the sun, they were still swamping his form and shifted often when he was nervous. Shen Qingqiu couldn't wait to see him when he grew into them, and they developed their final form and coloring. Truly OP. Except he actually could, because by then it would be black in Binghe, and he was in no rush to become a human stick. Rustle, rustle. Binghe's dark eyes darted to him and away. Rustle, rustle of inky black feathers. Just ask this master already. Finally, Binghe did. Shimei has told this one that Shizun has never allowed the celebration of the flitting festival before, even before this disciple joined the sect. Was that so? It was probably just because OG Shen Qingqiu hated fun and happiness. This disciple was simply wondering if Shizun was planning on taking part in the activities. Perhaps, Shen Qingqiu answered. First, he'd have to find out what exactly he would be expected to do. Oh, will Shizun dance this year? Ning Ying Ying had come up to greet them and was hopping on her toes in excitement. Her eyes were sparkling, hands clasped in front of her chest. Dancing? That seemed pretty tame. Perhaps, he repeated enigmatically. What else could he say to those puppy dog eyes? Ning Ying Ying squealed in delight. Binghe, on the other hand, suddenly looked unhappy. No need for a frown. This master wasn't standing in your way with your future wife. He wasn't really going to. Binghe didn't need to worry about his eyes being forced to see this old man dance. A shadow fell across his vision, and Shen Qingqiu looked up to see Lu Qingge arrowing in to land in front of the three of them with a flurry of wings and wind. His hawk-like wings, burnished bronze and tipped with brilliant red-orange, folded neatly to his body. Shen Qingqiu, he said in lieu of a greeting. They said your peak is participating in the flitting festival. Yes, said Shen Qingqiu. The less he talked, the less his lack of knowledge would trigger any suspicions. Take that, system. He really deserved a wisdom stat. Shizun may even dance this year, Ning Ying Ying said impishly. Lu Shishu will not want to miss it. Ying Ying, manners, Shen Qingqiu said, tapping her on the head with his fan. Truly, these spoiled children. Lu Shishu is surely to be too busy on his own peak. There's no need to especially come, Lu Binghe said. His eyebrows were drawn together, expression stiff. Shen Qingqiu bapped him with the fan, too. A lap around the peak, both of you, he said. Ning Ying Ying had the audacity to grin as she flounced away. Lu Binghe hesitated for a few seconds before giving a bow and leaving. Shen Qingqiu sighed, turning his head to try and examine or exchange a fond yet exasperated look that meant children, am I right? His fellow teacher, yet Lu Qingge was glaring straight at him intently. Shidi? Shen Qingqiu asked, unnerved to see the Bison Peak Lord's gaze stabbing into him like he was some sort of surprising ghost. Would Shidi like to go inside for some tea? Maybe the intense sun was getting to the other man? His face was tinged red, and he stood rigidly, like a block of wood. You're going to dance? He said. Why was that so surprising? But without further context, Shen Qingqiu was helpless to do more than flutter his fan to hide his expression and repeat. Perhaps. Lu Qingge blinked at him. And then he took off. Shen Qingqiu winced against the buffeting wind from the war god's powerful launch, squinting in annoyance. A little warning would be nice, Shidi. Was the thought of this master dancing so unappealing that it upset every man on the peaks? For some reason, that prickled that nasty little part of his brain that wanted to be contrary. Like when you were told to do the dishes just as you were about to start them, but hearing that made you not want to do them any longer. This old man dancing would be so terrible. Well then maybe now he would actually do it. Shen Qingqiu turned, nose in the air, and headed to the library. Why were there no useful books on the flitting festival? Shen Qingqiu could only assume the OG had kept them out altogether, out alongside other such frivolous subjects allergic to fun. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling he had read the term somewhere before. It seemed more like another thing in the world that was so understood it went unspoken. Or perhaps it was simply a local recent custom, or known under a different name. Oh, whatever the case, it appeared harmless. Though loath to trust holidays in proud immortal demon way, he doubted it was an excuse for an orgy or bloodbath, since this area was full of children. His White Lotus was still innocent, and thus the world would be more tame. Through osmosis in the next few days, he deemed it essentially an excuse to party. Each peak that participated, which were all but the ascetic one, seemed to host different types of events, though it was expected for people to travel between them freely. The range of things was odd. Anding was hosting building contests alongside Xian Shu, who were weaving baskets and silk. Baizan was hosting aerial competitions and displays. A few peaks were working together and making food stations and cooking contests. Another was doing flower arrangements. One was doing something with rocks. Find the best, smoothest rocks to pile. Shen Qingqiu's own hallmasters were arranging Qingjing's performance grooves into areas wide for dancing and playing music. The whole peak was flush with the discordant sounds of disciples practicing singing, playing instruments, or dancing. What was with this random assortment? Typical dumbfuck airplane, throwing everything at the wall and taking what stuck, regardless of rhyme or reason. Yes, he knew that this was AU specific and thus airplane might not be to blame, but he was not accepting constructive criticism on his criticism. Thank you very much. Shen Qingqiu was too busy to find out more details before the morning of the festival arrived. Even a heavy sleeper like Shen Qingqiu couldn't stay in dreamland when the sound of excited disciples tittered before the sun had fully risen. He lazed around the house, idly picking through his robes. There were a couple of sets buried in the back of his wardrobe that he'd never worn due to excessive fanciness and bizarre design. Sure, the long billowing materials painted the perfect picture of a peerless immortal, but they were also delicate and easy to get stuck indoors or snagged by careless passerbys. In addition, for this world, they seemed pretty thoughty. It was weird to be a prude about an exposed back as a millennial, but Shen Qingqiu had gotten used to the standards here like a proper fuddy-duddy. However, in the spring and summer, it wasn't uncommon to see such garments. The effect of the clothing looked similar to normal robes, yet they clasped tightly at the neck, with a thick collar, while the back was left open to the lower waist with just a couple of chains looped over and under the base wings to keep the fabric of the rest closed. Shen Qingqiu supposed that it would help with maneuverability in the air if you thought about it for just a second and then didn't use the rest of your brain. Stupid, horny airplane. However, unlike the tight-sleeve variety he'd seen Lu Qingge and the other fighters wear, the set in his closet still had long flowing sleeves. They looked entirely illogical, like the kind of things that only look good on mannequins. Must be more of the rule of cool. Shen Qingqiu had always been a little curious. Many around the peak had been wearing this kind of thing in the days approaching the festival. Perhaps it was cultural, and one had to respect traditions. He could just try one on, just to laugh at how illogical it was. He was still fumbling with the chains when he heard the door open. He hadn't even realized how much time had passed with the struggles of putting on this weird quasi-robe, quasi-sarong, quasi-dudo. It was past the usual time Binghe brought breakfast, and even in his awkwardly indisposed state, he could see the protagonist looked a bit scuffed. They stared at each other, Shen Qingqiu looking over his shoulder in the middle of back chain wrangling, and Binghe frozen at the entrance to the room. ... Why was this so awkward, huh? Protagonist, don't look so shell-shocked by the sight of another man's back. This wasn't a virgin-killing sweater scene with a sweetheart. Sure about that? Shen Qingqiu cleared his throat, letting go of the delicate gold chains and adjusting his posture. He felt the back gape open more and turned to face Binghe instead. His movement seemed to jumpstart Binghe, who in his haste to put down the tray on the table nearly tripped over his own 2 feet. "But this disciple assessed Shizun," he said, zooming frantically to Shen Qingqiu's side. He must have been mortified by seeing his teacher so indisposed, judging by his eagerness to fix his clothing. His fingers were clumsy, almost like they were shaking, as they grabbed the first delicate chain. Shen Qingqiu had to repress a ticklish shiver as they kept losing their grip and trailing across his skin to grab the clasps again and again. Was this old master's back so disgusting? The lead of a stallion novel must simply be allergic to seeing the body of other men. It wasn't like the OG had a bad back. I mean, sure, he was narrow, but there were still nice shoulders and a trim waist that dipped in. What was there to complain about? Finally, Binghe clasped the last chain that trailed down his spine between his wings to the bottom of his garment. Shen Qingqiu, who hadn't been planning to wear the thing out, was now stuck with the realization that changing after Binghe had put in all the effort of helping him would appear ungrateful. He felt the feathers on his wings fluff a bit against his nerves and forced them to settle. But it did remind him. "What has happened to Binghe's wings?" he asked, sitting down to breakfast. Binghe snapped out of a daze and hastily examined himself. "This disciple apologizes for appearing so disgraceful in front of Shizun," he said, sounding upset. Instead of the immaculate appearance he usually maintained, it looked like his student had been caught in a whirlwind. His robes and hair were mussed, and his wings had patches of sticking up feathers. In his anxiety to fix the problem, he was making it worse as his feathers ruffled. Such large wings must be so inconvenient. Just wait a few more years, protagonist. Many Shiji were in the kitchens this morning. They wanted this one to join them on other peaks or tried to steal Shizun's morning meal. Binghe, why are you looking so wrong, da? They were flirting sisters, not biting flies. Surely his little lotus wasn't so oblivious. Really? Anyway, Binghe may go about wherever he pleases on the peaks during the festival, Shen Qingqiu said. He stood in lieu of Binghe rose as well. But first, Shen Qingqiu said, and reached out. Without much thought, he soothed down a few errant feathers on Binghe's wing. Then, clucking his tongue, he walked around and started running his fingers over the most disturbed parts. The protagonist had a few stubborn pin feather sheaths in the hardest-to-reach area near the base of his wings. Shen Qingqiu knew how obnoxiously itchy those were from experience. He scratched them gently free, amused by the full-body tremble that shook the wings under his hands. Ning Ying needed to do a better job preening him. In the book, she was the only one close enough to do so on Qingjing, but surely he had others by this point here. Why did it seem like Binghe was doing it all by himself? Shen Qingqiu adjusted a twisted blood feather, careful to be easy with the sensitive thing. Even so, he heard a small sound like a sob being swallowed. Binghe? He asked, alarmed. He went around his wings to the front. Binghe wasn't crying, but his eyes were wide and red-rimmed. He was biting his lip, and Shen Qingqiu was alarmed to see him quivering. "This disciple is fine," he squeaked. "This disciple has just forgotten how it felt." Liu Binghe cut himself off with a clack of his teeth. He bowed abruptly. "This one will take out the dishes," he said again. His ears were red. Before Shen Qingqiu could do more than stare, he had fled. Well, That was a thing. Teenagers were so strange. Maybe to Lu Binghe it had felt like a teacher licking their finger and smudging dirt off his face. Yeah, that would be so... This world was so troublesome. His master apologizes. Do not cut out his tongue later in life. The festivities were exceedingly, well, festive. But why were these couples everywhere he looked? Shouldn't this be called the Dog Food Festival? For the second time that day, Shen Qingqiu shook his head at the antics of teenagers. More than anything, the peaks were loud. Like everyone was trying to be louder than everyone else, and the hall masters and other peak lords were letting it happen. So Shen Qingqiu followed their lead, allowing truly shocking acts of unfilial frivolity as he passed through the peaks. Onding's building competitions were impressive, though it was bizarre the subject matter was beds. Even so, the complex and intricate details on the wooden canopies were pleasing in a deep, strange way. None of them were exactly right, but he could appreciate the efforts. One bed, part of a display and not the competition, even had carvings of beasts that amusingly looked like a few Pokemon. This one is truly a work of mastery, Shen Qingqiu said. The builder beside it turned, and Shen Qingqiu was surprised to see it was Shang Qinghua, the Onding Peak Lord and future traitor to the sect. His own surprise paled in comparison to Shang Shidi's. Upon seeing who was complimenting him, the other man had jumped in place and stared at him with eyes the size of teacups. Shen Shixian, he yelped. Shidi appreciates Shixian's kind words, he said, while looking so wrong-footed that Shen Qingqiu had to hide his amusement behind his fan. The detailing is wonderful, especially on the beast there. He pointed with his fan at the creature that looked almost like a slowpoke. Shen Qinghua was flustered, looking pleased and scared in an uncomfortable mixture. The slow, hog-norn lemur-tailed hippo, Shang Shidi said. God damn it, Airplane, you fucking hack. Ripping off Pokemon wholesale? How had he not seen that connection before? Rendered beautifully, he said, because it was funny to see Shang Shidi freak out meter rise higher and higher. However, other people had stopped to watch the interaction. The girl that he recognized as Onding's head disciple had even smirked and was whispering in another girl's ear. They giggled. Shen Qingqiu! Oh, when had the Bison Peak Lord arrived? He was glowering at the bed like it had offended him. Lu Qingga, not everyone has your vendetta against resting. What had the bed ever done to you? When he turned that look onto the Onding Peak Lord, Shang Qinghua squeaked. This Qinghua has urgent business to attend to, he said, bowing once before fleeing. Shen Qingqiu watched him, bemused, before turning an inquisitive look to Lu Qingga. Come to Bison, he said, with no preamble. He would have taken off if Shen Qingqiu hadn't snagged his wrist. Shidi, the Shixian, would like to know why, he said. Really, a year of weekly visits to Clear's meridians, and the war god was just as allergic to speaking to him. Remember what we talked about? Shen Qingqiu teased. Use your words. Lu Qingga was staring hard at where he was gripping his wrist. Shidi, this master's hands weren't dirty. He let go and was surprised to find his own wrist gripped instead. I'm flying. Shen Qingqiu blinked, looked at the war god's currently folded wings. I'll be displaying, Lu Qingga finally groaned out. A flight. I want you to watch. The strain of the words had flushed the war god's face. He looked murderous. All this emotional constipation because his Shidi wanted to have him watch a flight technique demonstration? So overdramatic. Shen Qingqiu knew Lu Qingge found his flying lazy and ineffective, but there was no need to glare so. He'd gladly go watch for flight tips. Of course, lead the way, Shen Qingqiu said. Lu Qingge's clutch tightened painfully for a second, until Shen Qingqiu's bones creaked. He let go as if he'd been electrocuted when he saw Shen Qingqiu's wince. Always so forceful, Shen Qingqiu grumbled. The Shixian's old body is delicate. Lu Qingge swallowed loudly. Yes, he agreed, like a jerk. When watching Lu Qingge fly, it was easy to realize why he had to die in the original Proud Immortal Demon way. He was simply too OP, too beautiful, too graceful, too powerful. Bison's sky had been full of displays of flying prowess before they arrived, but everyone was blown out of the water as soon as Lu Qingge rose among them. Most landed quickly, having their burnt pride soothed by their friends as the war god dominated the field. There were many obstacles set up, but such things rolled like water off a duck's back to Lu Qingge. Shen Qingqiu fully agreed with the crowd, who cheered and gasped appreciatively during the complex dives and spins. Some people even seemed to be catcalling. He'd been hitting Zui Xian's alcohol stand so hard this early in the day. Shameless. Though he did get it. Watching Lu Qingge in the air got the blood pumping. It made something in his chest clench and his stomach tingle. The reaction all hot-blooded men had to watching other men do manly feats of athleticism. If sports had been like watching Qingge Shidi, then If sports had been like watching Qingge Shidi, then perhaps Shen Qingqiu would have liked them more back in his first life. The only one who didn't seem impressed was Lu Binghe, who was glowering by his side. Was that the taste of vinegar in the air? Do not worry, Binghe, Shen Qingqiu reassured. This master is sure that in a few years his disciple will be just as masterful in the air. You will impress your harem. Qingge won't steal them from you. Lu Binghe looked torn between happy and unhappy at his words. Will Shizun watch my display when I'm ready? He asked. This master looks forward to Binghe's efforts. This disciple will work hard to be ready, quickly. Please wait for me. Ah, the sticky child. Shen Qingqiu turned back to Lu Qingge's impressive performance. A gasp slipped out alongside the crowd as Lu Qingge pulled out of a truly blitzing dive at the very last second, his wings gleaming golden with sunlight. Backlit against the sun, he looked every inch the god in War God. Shen Qingqiu fanned himself, finding the peak unbearably warm today. How had he not snapped his own neck with that move? The rule of cool must be in full effect. Qi Qingxi, who was on Shen Qingqiu's other side, packed so much derision into one syllable that he even tore his eyes away from the sight to look at her. She, alongside all the peak lords he'd seen so far, was wearing the backless robes, so at least his morning's gamble had been on point. Won't you join him? She asked. Against that performance? She may. Do you want this one to lose so much face? Such fastidiousness, he said, gently fanning. I could never keep up with our war god in the air. Of course you couldn't, she scoffed. But he could feel her side-eyeing him. It would be amusing, though, if just to see the face Lu Shidi made. She may likes to tease, Shen Qingqiu said. Perhaps you would like to join him instead? Oh, I don't think I'm the one he's hoping for, Qi Qingqi said, though I doubt he even knows what he is hoping for. What is this cryptic dialogue? If she was going to hint at gossip, just say it outright. Shen Qingqiu leaned a little closer, inquisitive. Shime, are you implying that our Shidi has a special someone? That battle OTA fanatic? Our Lu Qingge? Have I met her? To his disappointment, she just stared at him until he gave up with a little huff, turning back to watch the display. Fine, keep your secrets. You could only hope it wasn't one of Binghe's future harem. Men, he heard Qingqiu mumble in disgust. Finally, sometime later, the war god rose from another spine-shattering dive and arrowed in like a jump-framed anime character. Shen Qingqiu barely had time to brace himself with an arm thrown out in front of Lu Binghe before Lu Qingge fully unfurled his wings and spun sharply in a circle, settling down in front of Shen Qingqiu in a graceful hop. He glistened with sweat, chest heaving. Damn proud immortal demon way, universe! That wasn't supposed to make someone look so attractive. Exercise was supposed to make people gross and stinky, not flushed and glowing. He glared at Shen Qingqiu, probably thinking about how lazy of a flyer he was in comparison. Turn down the intensity, Shidi. No need to look so heated. As impressive as ever, Shen Qingqiu said. Lu Qingge's glare only tightened. Did you like it? He asked. The words seemed to be shoved out. Shen Qingqiu wanted to coo. He really did. Did all the younger members of the Peaks take lessons in neediness? Really? Fishing for compliments, Shidi? Lu Binghe, the master angler of such things, mumbled something incomprehensible behind him. He could feel his little white lotus latch onto his sleeve, but ignored him for the moment. Of course this master did, Shen Qingqiu said, trying hard to keep the teasing out of his tone. Lu Shidi must know he's peerless in the skies. And because he couldn't help it, conditioned as he was by the spoiled children of the Peak to react this way, he reached out and patted Lu Qingge's head. The war god froze, the whites of his eyes showing all of the way around. Shameless! He choked and smacked Shen Qingqiu's hand away. With a flutter of wind and feathers, he was gone. Youth. Yu Qingyuan was waiting for him on Qingjing Peak. For some reason, he froze stiff upon first spotting Shen Qingqiu. Shen Qingqiu slowed his approach, barely resisting the urge to look behind him for a ghost after taking in the sect leader's expression. Shen Shidi, those robes, Yu Qingyuan said. Shen Qingqiu could feel his cheeks heat a little. As pleasant as the breeze was on his back, it was hard not to be subconscious when he'd grown used to 6 layers from ankle to chin. He's been purposely ignoring all the boggled looks he keeps getting all day. He'd even witnessed Wei Qingwei walk into a wall in his peripheral vision. The other was so busy staring. It was just a back! Nearly everyone else was wearing the same style. What was with this exceptionalist bullshit? Is there a problem? He asked coolly. No, Yu Qingyuan said quickly, then seemed to settle himself, his lips turning into a strained smile. This Shixian is simply happy to see his gift came to use. Well, that made this a little awkward. Shen Qingqiu, as Shen Yuan, liked Yu Qingyuan. He reminded him strongly of his own Dagua. Kind, polite, strong, prone to letting Shen Yuan get away with anything. But Shen Qingqiu OG. He would have expected the man to have burnt any large gifts from the sect leader, not stuffed them into the back of his closet with preserving talismans attached. It made interacting with the sect leader tricky. The whole whatever. whatever was going on between the original goods and Yu Qingyuan lingered under their feet like a mine, and Shen Qingqiu felt like they both were always just walking on eggshells. Yu Qingyuan because of what he remembered, and Shen Yuan Qingyuan because of what he didn't. It felt like one misstep and everything would blow up in their faces, especially his hidden identity. Took Shen Qingqiu a moment of standing there to realize their clothes were complementary in cut and motif, lotus and mountains, though his own were green and gold, whereas Yu Qingyuan's were brown and gold. Still, they appeared like they belonged to the same set. Accidental Qing Lu Shuang? Matching couples clothing? The OG would be spitting up blood. How unfortunate. Like two girls arriving to the prom in the same dress. Shen Qingqiu dealt with the realization like he did most inconvenient things, shoving it out of his mind for now. That's what laying awake at night, trying to sleep, was for. Ignore, ignore. Yu Qingyuan was looking a little misty-eyed. It wasn't a big enough deal to cry over. What was wrong with the man of this hot-blooded novel? Shidi hopes Shixian enjoys Qing's performances, he said with a polite bow. He turned away, fully intending to escape. Shidi, please wait, Yu Qingyuan said. Shen Qingqiu looked at him from behind the shield of his fan. The Shixian humbly presents gift, the sect leader said. He held forward a beautiful jade stone, perfectly round. With his cultivator senses, Shen Qingqiu could clearly see it was covered in intricate carvings from top to bottom. It gleamed with power, so clear and pure one could taste a tang of it on the roof of one's mouth. Even Lu Binghe was quivering by his side, eyes staring intently at the gem. Shen Qingqiu wondered guiltily if he was thinking about the fake jade pendant, currently tucked away in the system's storage. The protagonist's mouth was twisted in an unhappy grimace. The Shidi could not possibly accept, Shen Qingqiu said. Yu Qingyuan, your weird bias didn't mean you should spend a fortune on the OG. It would have just spit in your face. This one is also not to your liking? Yu Qingyuan asked. His posture had wilted, shoulders drawn in, wings drooping an inch and smile becoming more forced. Stop looking like a kicked puppy in the rearview mirror that's been tossed onto the side of the road. It was good Lu Binghe was clinging to his sleeve because his arm gave an aborted twitch. Gah! He'd almost reflexively patted the sect leader, the most powerful cultivator alive, like a dog. It is a masterpiece, Shen Qingqiu assured. Much too valuable of a gift for Qingqiu to accept. It collects ambient spiritual energy and cleanses the air around it. The Shixian would feel better for it to find use with Shidi's condition. He didn't need your Xianxia purifier, Shixian. I must decline, Shixian. If Qingqiu Shidi does not like this one, I have many others he may prefer, Yu Qingyuan said quickly. This one is fine, Shen Qingqiu said, giving up. It really was a nice rock. Something about it sparkled in his hindbrain. He strangely felt that it would feel nice smoothing it against the blankets of his bed, though that thought was illogical. But did Yu Qingyuan have to look like he'd hung the mood? He just accepted a present. Shidi must be going, Shen Qingqiu said, tucking the jade into his sleeve. Maybe Shizun would be more comfortable in other robes, Lu Binghe said a few minutes later. They were lingering outside of the main performance square. Shen Qingqiu could see very clearly now why the original goods didn't allow participation in the festival before. His usually placid peak was a thrum of activity and sound, like a festival one would find in the mortal towns. Or back home, came a tiny, homesick thought. He quickly squashed it, sipping from the refreshing fruit tea Binghe had brought him. People, mostly from his peak, were taking turns performing, whether through instrument or voice. But unlike the usual decorum, occasionally others would try to jump in and turn the music into a duet. Most of the time it fizzled out, but sometimes the spontaneity mashed together and the performers would get lost in a world of their own. What was this, Disney? Shen Qingqiu repressed a shiver of disgust. He didn't know who to blame, so he sent a curse up to airplane as a default reflex. This master is fine as he is, Shen Qingqiu finally answered, lightly fanning himself. Oh, Binghe, it would be more embarrassing to change now. It would be obvious why you'd done it. It was nearing sunset when the peak turned towards dancing. There were more people than Shen Qingqiu had ever seen there, and the introvert inside him was begging him to go curl up under blankets in the safety of his bamboo house. But the small amount of wine Shui Xian's peak lord had pressed upon him had increased his laziness points temporarily over his recluse stat. It had also blurred the world like a filter, making everything warmer and more palatable. The Shui Xian peak lord had said something about herbs that cultivated relaxation. Whatever it was, Shen Qingqiu approved. At least for now, while he sat at one of the many benches surrounding the dance square. It was too bad Liu Binghe was too young to partake. His little lotus seemed to get more and more unhappy as the day went along. Currently, he was hovering in front of his shizun, glaring hard at anyone whose gaze lingered too long in their direction. Binghe, surely you would have more fun with your martial sisters than staying by this old man's side, Shen Qingqiu had said, more than once as the day went on. But his little student was overwhelmingly filial, refusing each attempt to send him away to his future wives. It wasn't as if he lacked opportunity. Many women had approached Liu Binghe throughout the day, asking him to fly, offering him tokens, showing him their weaving, trying to pull him to dance, etc. Where was the hot-blooded protagonist? He supposed the teen had not yet awakened an interest in romance. He lit a candle for the sisters who swung and missed. It was interesting to watch the dances. So many were odd, eccentric, eclectic, probably specific to this AU. The genre was all over the place, as was the music. Inconsistent. Typical airplane. Sometimes Shen Qingqiu caught himself tapping his foot or head and went rigid. 2OC! Even as the peak lord of the arts, he had trouble imagining the OG dancing, even if it seemed normal for everyone to do so in this world. It wasn't like Shen Qingqiu had danced much as Shen Yuan either, aside from some lessons he took as a child. He'd managed to convince his parents that keeping him in ballet was too girly, while hiding his main motivation that he hated exercise. Even so, something about the atmosphere was affecting him. Everyone was dancing wrong somehow. He couldn't put his finger on it, but it itched like a rash under his skin. Maybe the OG's perfectionism lingered in his body like a haunting ghost. It was just, the more he watched, the more he wanted to show them how it was really done. Shen Qingqiu sipped a little more of the wine, trying hard not to scratch it. It was like heart chicken pox. Where were the mental oven mitts to tape onto his hands? In front of them, Ning Ying Ying finished dancing, having spun circles around Ming Fan and a few others who had not been able to match her steps. Shen Qingqiu wanted to coo again, like a proud parent. He watched her approach the musicians currently playing. Strangely, they glanced in his direction. Needy elder disciples wanting acknowledgement. It was a plague. He nodded to them and lost interest. The buzz of alcohol, or whatever herb, was a vibe. He would just enjoy the gentle buzzing. The music changed its mood. A little softer, slower. Another girl asked Binghe to dance and got politely shut down. The itch under his skin grew. It felt like the urge to swim when tossed into water. Instinctual. Still, he ignored it. New side mission. Show them how it's done. Reward 300 B points. Details dance in the flitting festival. What was that? Did anyone hear anything? No. That's right. Shen Qingqiu definitely didn't hear that Google Translate voice. He finished his drink and let Binghe collect the cup from him, fully ignoring the transparent blue screen. Accept, deny. Floated in front of him, but he wasn't falling for that again. New side mission. Show them how it's done. Reward 300 B points plus exclusive festival special item. Details dance at the flitting festival. Joke's on you, system, Shen Qingqiu thought at it smugly. I can't dance. Host need not worry. Host just needs to follow his instincts. His body will do the rest. Convenient cheat mode, eh? Shen Qingqiu thought. But he'd lost more face and lose more face than he'd gain B points. What happened to OOC? Patooey. You're taking lessons from Airplane, Inconsistent. There was nothing that could motivate Shen Qingqiu to dance in front of everyone. One time he tried to copy an anime dance in his room alone, he'd nearly died from self-mortification. And that was as Shen Yuan. The answer was no. He was not getting up from this bench. New side mission. Show them how it's done. Reward 300 B points plus exclusive festival special item. Punishment for failure, negative 800 B points. Shen Qingqiu got up from the bench. Curse you, you shitty Google knockoff, he thought bitterly as Binghe jerked and stared at him with wide eyes. Wings fluffed out like a startled cat. Even with just the small movement, people were turning to look. He could see Qi Qingqi elbowing Lu Qingge where they stood across the circular clearing of dancers, both their gazes turning to him. Is Shizun going to perform? Lu Binghe asked. This was so embarrassing. His disciple already looked so torn between loyal excitement and trepidation. Binghe doesn't have to watch if he'd rather not, Shen Qingqiu said graciously, petting his little lotus. Binghe's wings flared out more, knocking into a couple of people behind them, though he paid it little mind. This Binghe will watch closely, he cried, indignant. Protagonist, please don't. Internally despairing of the certain hit to his reputation, yet outwardly graceful and stoic, Shen Qingqiu made his way into the dancing. Upon seeing him there, most of the dancers startled and stopped cold. They skittered away like schools of fish around a shark, leaving him exposed and alone. If it were modern times, this would be where the spotlight blinded him. No pressure. Dumb fuck system. Dumb fuck AU. In the corner of his vision, Shang Qinghua dropped his cup, spilling it on the bottom of Yu Qingyuan's robes. Neither seemed to notice, each staring wide-eyed, though with very different expressions. Shen Qingqiu closed his eyes, took a long, deep breath. The music changed again. A delicate Shao flute leading and the Guqian supporting. He could only hope he didn't feel as stiff as he felt, instead channeling cold poise. Felt like the entire pavilion was holding their breath around him. The instinct was still there, fluttering in his veins. All he had to do was let go. Turn off his brain. His one weakness. The special event item better be fucking worth it. Then he released his grip on his body. Through a haze, he could feel himself move. Limbs graceful, the sweep of his sleeves making gentle patterns as he spun. He followed the music in his heart as much as the one in his ears, every move elegant, like a dragonfly landing on a dewdrop, like petals in a gentle wind. Like a peerless immortal master ascending into the heavens and sharing the sheer beauty of the moment with the mortals below. Shen Qingqiu would break Weibo, if is what he was getting at. As the moments went on, Shen Qingqiu grew more comfortable, relaxed into the entity controlling his body. His fan joined the dance, moving as if part of his own body. His instincts were demanding, bringing his body through motions people probably trained their entire lives for. The relief from its pestering was enough to spark a bit of mischief in the Qingjing Peak Lord. He snagged up a large performance fan from one of the entranced watchers before spinning back to the center. Shang Qinghua's face was extra hilarious, bug-eyed like he was about to die from shock. Shen Qingqiu felt like taunting the little rat, and he swept in close to teasingly bap him with the end of the fan at the climax of an arc of music. His face! The poor thing was so terrified he yelped, lurched sideways to hide behind the sect leader. Shen Qingqiu shot Yue Qingyuan a look over the edge of his fan as he brought it back and curved his body away, blind to the coy picture he painted to his audience. Yu Qingyuan said a name Shen Qingqiu didn't recognize in a breathless puff of air as if he'd been punched in the stomach. Shen Qingqiu stuck his nose in the air and spun away, the trail of fabric from the fan a teasing ribbon of motion. Yu Qingyuan took one step to follow, then froze, fists clenching at his sides. With an expression Shen Qingqiu couldn't parse, guilt, he lowered his head and didn't pursue further. That's no fun. He shouldn't be the only Peak Lord forced to embarrass himself. Making Shang Qinghua uncomfortable under attention would be funny, but the man already looked a poke away from fleeing to the hills, so he would be useless. So instead, he scanned the crowd as he danced. Among the sea of stunned expressions, yes, he knew. The system made him do it. Stop staring. He spotted Qi Qingqi and Lu Qingga. He made his way like the smooth slide of rocks slipping over water, robes and wings trailing ethereally. The people around the other two Peak Lords moved back as he approached, allowing Shen Qingqiu to circle them both, trapping them for a moment in the curl of fabric trailing in his wake. Hitting another crescendo of a song, he stopped in front of them with a strong motion, throwing his wings open in challenge. He sent them the most condescending half-smile he could, the kind the original would have thrown down just to set off his martial siblings in the past. For the few seconds it took for Shen Qingqiu to leap backwards and away, the two gaped at him as if they'd been struck dumb, like he'd smacked them in the face. But Lu Qingga would always respond to being baited. So easy to troll. In the next instant, he was there, taking up Shen Qingqiu's space with a dance of his own. His moves were more like attack forms, movement strong and abrupt. His wings would flash out, flaring and snapping. It was pretty, but something felt off. Instead of petals and a gentle breeze, it was like powerful bursts of wind buffeting them into a spiral. Shen Qingqiu adjusted his moves, adding more athleticism in the manner of snippets he remembered from ballet, but the two lords didn't mesh just right together in a way that soothed something scratchy in his hindbrain. The more he danced, the more arrogant Shen Qingqiu felt, the more flushed and hazy and buoyant. A couple others joined them on the dance floor. Qi Qingqi with more practiced steps and deliberate sweeps of her own fan. She kept her distance, joining, but not trying to match the other two. To his great surprise, Lu Binghe jumped in soon after the Bison Master. His movements were unpracticed, a little gawky with adolescent inexperience with his own changing body. But he was still every bit the protagonist, oozing his own kind of earnest charm. His style was like a step between Shen Qingqiu's fluid grace and Lu Qingga's powerful martial forms. He lacked flowing robes or sharp control, but his large wings flared wide and beautiful against the sunset. Their iridescent fledgling spots burned red with setting light, a hint at the vivid crimson markings he'd develop someday. Shen Qingqiu couldn't tell if Lu Binghe had joined them to loyally take the pressure off his teacher, or if his little lotus was just sticky enough to not want his teacher giving attention to anyone else. Like a child who didn't want to share their mother's attention with their siblings. Either way, it made something in Shen Qingqiu's chest grow bright. Is this what being high felt like? Like a Meitu filter had fallen over his eyes, making everything softer and warmer and slowed down. A bizarre giddiness that thrummed alongside his heartbeat as he danced circles around the other two. Neither could mesh with him just right to satisfy the strongest of his weird body urges, but it was fun enough. Maybe someday they'd find the correct rhythm. He corrected them both a few times with his fan, easily evading retaliation like rain rolling off a leaf. The dance was starting to fall apart. The music grew more boisterous to match the more aggressive movements of the others. Poor dear Binghe had another bout of clumsiness, his wings constantly getting in the way of his Lu Shishu. He would have directly smacked him in the face more than once if the other hadn't dodged. In retaliation, Lu Qingge had struck out with his own wings to clear the space of the protagonist. As their attention turned towards squabbling, Shen Qingqiu couldn't help it. He really couldn't. He laughed. It was only a few bright huffs of air, but the other two men reacted like it had been a firework, both twitching, freezing, and turning their heads towards him. Shen Qingqiu quickly covered his lower face with his own fan and turned away. Don't look! They'd be bringing the possession testing swords to his bamboo cabin tomorrow for sure. Shen Qingqiu folded his wings neatly against his back, his robes settling still around him. With a polite nod, he handed the performance fan back to the random disciple and gracefully made his escape. Shizun! Shen Qingqiu! He ignored the calls. The last few minutes were catching up to his brain now, and it was time to gracefully exit the scene. He ignored the cheering. Leave them wanting more. That was the expression, right? He had an appointment to go scream into his pillow. As the sun finally sank beneath the curve of sight, Shen Qingqiu fled, not knowing the many hearts he'd charmed that night, blissfully unaware of the increased pining that would follow for years to come. The special item was an oily lotion of some kind in a lurid pink bottle. It smelled like strawberry, but tasted awful. Shen Qingqiu tossed it into his Qiankun pouch in disgust, not seeing the light of day for many years to come. So that's the end of the original story, and then here are the author notes. Notes. Did you pick up on all the bird courting methods? Winky face, they were fun to write. If you like this, please feel free to subscribe to the series. I have lots of little ideas for fics in this AU, including follow-ups to these two fics that are in it already. My Twitter is here, and I'd love to have some more Danmei mutuals. So their Twitter is Koi Chaser, if you want to follow them, which you should. If you enjoyed, please leave a comment. They really make my day. Definitely go leave a comment. Go leave some kudos. Tell them hey. But yeah, definitely go give them some love. But I really like this one because it's so funny, as well as being well written. I love the inner monologue of Shen Yuan / Shen Qingqiu with all that. But that is our second to last fanfic special. So I hope you enjoyed. And I will see you tomorrow for the last time in our fanfic special. Have an absolutely wonderful night or day, depending. Bye-bye.